There is a truth rarely spoken in spiritual spaces, a truth hidden behind incense smoke, meditation cushions, and carefully chosen words like purity, transcendence, and detachment. It is this: the more spiritually awakened a person becomes, the more intensely they often struggle with lust. Not less, more. This seems like a contradiction. After all, spirituality is supposed to free us from desire, isn't it? Carl Jung would say, only if you misunderstand the soul. Jung understood something that modern spirituality often avoids. He knew that awakening does not erase instinct, it amplifies it. When a person begins to wake up spiritually, they do not rise above the body. They descend deeper into it. Lust, in Jungian psychology, is not merely sexual appetite. It is raw life force. It is eros, the psychic energy that seeks union, connection, intensity, and embodiment. Spiritually awakened individuals become painfully aware of this energy moving within them. Where others repress it unconsciously, they feel it consciously, and consciousness makes everything louder. This is why many awakened people feel ashamed of desires they believe they should have outgrown. They meditate, they reflect, they study ancient wisdom, and yet lust returns, stronger, more vivid, more symbolic. Jung warned about this exact trap. He said that when spirituality tries to rise without integrating the body, it creates a split in the psyche, and whatever is split becomes shadow. Lust does not disappear, it hides, and what hides in the shadow does not weaken. It grows darker, more compulsive, more obsessive. This is why spiritually awakened people often experience lust, not as simple attraction, but as something overwhelming, intrusive, even frightening. They are not less evolved, they are more exposed. Awakening strips away distractions. It removes numbing habits. It sharpens perception. And when the soul becomes more sensitive, instinct becomes more intense. Jung believed that libido, the energy behind desire, is the same energy that fuels creativity, spirituality, and transformation. It is not the enemy of awakening, it is its engine. But when a person tries to become pure without understanding this, lust turns into an inner enemy instead of a messenger. Many awakened individuals secretly fear their own desires. They worry that lust means regression, that it proves they are weak, unworthy, or spiritually immature. But Jung would say the opposite. The real danger is not lust. The real danger is moral superiority. When a person identifies too strongly with the image of being spiritual, the unconscious responds by pushing instinct forward with force. The psyche always seeks balance. If you rise too far into light, the shadow rises to meet you. And lust is one of the shadow's most powerful languages. It is the soul's way of saying, you cannot transcend what you refuse to touch. This struggle is not a failure. It is an initiation, but only if it is understood. In the next part, we will explore why lust becomes symbolic during spiritual awakening, how projection, anima, and archetypal desire distort attraction, and why awakened people often desire what they cannot have. As spiritual awareness deepens, lust begins to change its form. It is no longer just about bodies. It becomes symbolic, charged, almost mythic. This is where Carl Jung introduces one of his most misunderstood ideas, projection. According to Jung, when a person has not integrated certain aspects of their inner world, the psyche projects them outward. What we cannot see in ourselves, we see in others, magnified, idealized, distorted. For spiritually awakened people, this projection often takes a sexual or romantic form. They don't just feel desire, they feel fascination, an intense pull toward a specific person, someone who seems to carry mystery, depth, danger, or transcendence. This is not ordinary attraction. This is the anima or animus at work. Jung described the anima as the inner feminine image within a man, and the animus as the inner masculine image within a woman. These archetypes act as bridges to the unconscious. When awakening begins, These inner figures become activated, and when they are unconscious, they are projected. The awakened individual doesn't just want the person, they want what the person represents: completion, wholeness, union with the lost part of the soul. This is why lust during awakening often feels obsessive. The mind knows it's irrational, but the soul feels it is destiny. Spiritually awakened people often find themselves desiring people who are unavailable, inappropriate, distant, or impossible to fully possess. Married individuals, emotionally closed partners, people from different worlds. Jung would say this is no accident. The unconscious chooses figures that cannot fully reciprocate because the real relationship is not meant to happen externally. It is meant to happen internally. The tragedy occurs when the awakened person believes the desire is about the other. They chase, they fantasize, they suffer, but the hunger is never satisfied, because no human being can carry the weight of an archetype. This is why lust becomes painful during awakening. Before awakening, desire is often simple and unconscious. After awakening, it becomes reflective, symbolic, and emotionally intense. The person begins to notice patterns. Why do I desire this type of energy? Why does attraction feel spiritual? Why does sexuality feel intertwined with longing, creativity, and suffering? Jung warned that confusing archetypal desire with personal desire leads to emotional bondage. The more spiritual awareness grows, the more dangerous unconscious lust becomes. Not because it is immoral, but because it is misunderstood. Lust at this stage is not asking for indulgence. It is asking for integration. It wants to be seen, not acted out blindly. It wants to be understood, not suppressed. This is why repression never works for awakened people. They are too conscious to repress successfully and too moralized to surrender blindly. So they remain stuck in tension, meditating while fantasizing, seeking purity while craving intensity, trying to rise above desire while being consumed by it internally. Jung called this the neurosis of the spiritual seeker, the soul trapped between instinct and ideal. But Jung never believed the solution was celibacy or indulgence. The solution was symbolic understanding, to ask not, how do I get rid of lust, but what is this desire trying to unite me with? Because every lustful fixation hides a fragment of the self that wants to return home. In the next part, we will explore the shadow side of spiritual purity, why moral spirituality intensifies sexual struggle, and how the ego uses spirituality to avoid true transformation. One of the greatest illusions in modern spirituality is the belief in purity. Carl Jung considered this belief not only false, but psychologically dangerous. Because whenever the ego identifies itself as pure, the unconscious is forced to carry everything labeled as impure, and lust becomes its primary container. Spiritually awakened people often construct a spiritual identity: calm, elevated, disciplined, conscious. This identity feels sacred, protective, superior to the chaos of ordinary life. But the psyche does not tolerate one-sidedness. Jung's central law was this: whatever is excluded from consciousness does not disappear, it compensates. The more someone clings to a pure spiritual self-image, the more powerful the rejected instincts become. This is why some of the most spiritually disciplined individuals experience the most disturbing sexual fantasies. Not because they are corrupted, but because they are divided. Lust, in this context, becomes shadow material. It carries aggression, dominance, surrender, taboo, intensity, everything the spiritual ego refuses to acknowledge. The problem is not the desire itself. The problem is the moralization of desire. When lust is judged instead of explored, it turns compulsive. Jung observed this clearly in patients who pursued enlightenment without psychological integration. They became inflated with light while being haunted by dark impulses. This is what Jung called spiritual inflation. The ego believes it has transcended the body. The unconscious responds by dragging the body back into awareness through obsession. Sexual struggle, then, is not a sign of spiritual failure. It is a sign that the awakening has become imbalanced. True individuation, Jung's term for psychological wholeness, requires holding opposites, spirit and instinct, sacred and animal, meaning and flesh. The awakened person must learn to contain desire without acting it out unconsciously or repressing it violently. This containment creates tension, and tension is transformative. Jung believed that libido trapped between opposites becomes creative energy. This is why many spiritually awakened people experience surges in creativity alongside sexual struggle. Art, writing, visionary thinking, mythic imagination. The same energy that fuels lust fuels transformation, but only if it is consciously held. When awakened individuals fail to do this, lust turns destructive. It seeks release at any cost. Affairs justified as soul connections. Addictions disguised as tantric exploration. Manipulation cloaked in spiritual language. This is the dark side of awakening rarely discussed. Jung warned that spirituality can become the most sophisticated defense mechanism the ego has. It uses light to avoid shadow, and lust becomes the crack where the shadow breaks through. The solution is not discipline alone, nor surrender alone. It is dialogue. Jung encouraged active imagination, a method of consciously engaging with unconscious figures. Lust must be spoken to, not silenced. It must be asked, what do you want? What do you protect? What part of me have I abandoned? Often, lust guards grief, or rage, or unlived passion, or creativity denied. When these underlying forces are integrated, lust loses its compulsive grip. It does not vanish. It transforms. It becomes vitality instead of obsession, connection instead of hunger, embodiment instead of escape. In the final part, we will explore how spiritually awakened people can integrate lust without repression or indulgence, what Jung meant by sacred instinct, and why wholeness, not purity, is the true goal of awakening. Carl Jung never believed that the goal of spiritual awakening was moral perfection. He believed the goal was wholeness, and wholeness includes lust, not as indulgence, not as suppression, but as integrated instinct. The spiritually awakened person must eventually face a difficult realization. Lust is not trying to pull you down. It is trying to bring something forgotten back into consciousness. Jung understood instinct as sacred intelligence, a form of wisdom older than thought. When instinct is ignored, it becomes chaotic. When it is honored, it becomes guidance. This is what Jung meant by sacred instinct. The integration of lust begins with honesty, not spiritual honesty, psychological honesty, admitting desire without judgment, observing it without acting automatically, allowing it to exist without attaching identity to it. Desire says nothing about your worth. It only reveals where energy is trapped. The awakened individual learns to contain lust. Containment is not repression. It is conscious holding, feeling the desire fully in the body, noticing the fantasies without feeding them, tracing the emotional charge beneath them. Often what emerges is longing for intimacy, creativity, power, or aliveness, not sex itself. When this energy is integrated, sexuality becomes grounded, no longer compulsive, no longer secretive, no longer shame-driven. Jung believed that when instinct and spirit are united, eros becomes relational instead of obsessive. The awakened person no longer chases completion through others. They recognize that desire points inward. This is why many spiritually mature individuals become less reactive sexually, not because desire is gone, but because it is contained within the self. They can feel attraction without being possessed by it. They can experience lust without collapsing into fantasy. They can embody sexuality without losing consciousness. This is true freedom, not freedom from desire, but freedom within it. Jung wrote that the final stage of individuation is the ability to live paradox, to be spiritual and embodied, to be conscious and instinctual, to be ethical without being repressive. The awakened person who integrates lust does not become dull. They become alive, grounded, magnetic, rooted in the body without being enslaved by it. This integration often leads to deeper relationships, creative expression, and psychological stability. Lust, once feared, becomes a teacher. It reveals where life wants to flow, and when it is finally listened to, it no longer needs to scream. This is why many awakened people struggle with lust early on and transcend struggle later, not by conquering desire, but by befriending it. The path of awakening is not ascension away from humanity. It is descent into it. Jung understood that enlightenment without embodiment is dissociation, and spirituality without instinct is lifeless. So if you are spiritually awake and secretly struggling with lust, know this: you are not failing. You are integrating. This tension is not a flaw in your awakening. It is proof that it is real, because the soul does not want purity. It wants truth, and truth is always whole. If this message reached you, you already felt it. Write awareness in the comments so I know this understanding connected with you. Subscribe to Strategic Mind and stay conscious. We'll see you in the next video.